All right, so what we're going to look at today is when you take out a loan that you're paying down, how can you calculate the remaining balance on your loan at any given time? So we've looked at these amortization tables, and basically the idea is just how do you jump to any point in the amortization table? So, like maybe you've had this loan and you've been paying it off for 5 years, and you want to know, okay, well, how much do I still owe on this loan? Okay, so as you can see, there's kind of this disgusting formula here that we're going to talk about. So we are going to kind of go over how this works and sort of give you an idea about what's happening here. But from there, what we're going to more focus on is just like more practically, like how would you actually use this in your life? Because realistically speaking, you're never going to use this in your life. I would never use this in my life. When I want to look at things for what's going on with my mortgage, I definitely don't calculate this. Okay, so I want to talk about like how can we use the resources that are available to us to answer some of the more practical questions that you're actually going to see in your life of things that you'd actually care about in regard to a mortgage. Okay. So let's start with this guy. We are just going to look at this formula because I want you to have a general idea of what's going on when you're calculating these. Okay, so we've got this nasty formula. And basically, what you do is you calculate the total amount that you're paying on your loan, including interest. Okay, that's what this part of this formula is. Okay, so this is the amount of your loan with any interest that you have to pay. Okay, so you calculate that part and then you subtract the future value of the account, which is basically how much you've put in. So you basically like project forward and say, okay, well, after however long, how much have I put in? Okay, so this part right here, okay, this is how much you've already like paid into the account. So this is the amount that's already paid to the account. Okay, so you can see it's just kind of these two formulas sort of bunched together. This is a continuously compounding formula. Just they used for K the number of payments that have already been made. So previously we would do like N times T, the number of times you compound per year times the amount of time. That's what K is. It's just how many payments have been made. So how many payments per year times the number of years is how many payments have been made, right? So that's what K is. And we just use a different symbol here because it's not necessarily like you might not always calculate this at a firm year. Like you might say, like, oh, like it's been 3 years and a month. So you would just say instead, oh, okay, well, that's this many payments. All right, so what do all these letters mean? P stands for your principal, the amount that you already borrowed. Okay, R, little r, is your interest rate. That shows up a few different spots. N is how many payments you make in a year. It's usually 12, so 12 times a year that you're making your payment because most loans are a monthly payment. So that's pretty common. That shows up in a few places. Capital R is the monthly payment that you make every month or however many period, right? And then K is how many payments have already been made. So let's look at this one. So the Blakeleys borrowed 120,000 from the bank. They charge interest at 4% per year on the unpaid balance. The interest computations are made at the end of each month. That's just not super important. It does make a difference because if you pay off at the beginning of the month and you want to know at the end of the month how much is left, that makes a difference. We're kind of simplifying that part. Okay, so they've agreed to repay the loan in equal monthly installments. So they're making 12 payments a year over 30 years. But after 15 years, they decide they want to sell the house and move. How much do you still own on the house? Okay, so how much do you still have to pay for your house? It was $120,000 originally, but you paid a bunch of it. Okay, so what some people tend to think is they think, well, it's a 30-year loan, you're 15 years in, so shouldn't you owe half of this amount, right? If you're halfway through, shouldn't you only owe $60,000? So that's what we're going to calculate here. Okay, so let's take a look and see what actually happens. So our final balance here, okay, is we're going to start with our principal amount. That's how much they borrowed, $120,000, times 1 plus the interest rate, which was 4%, so 0.04, divided by N. They're making monthly installments. So that's 12 payments a year. That's very common. And then K is how many payments have already been made. Okay. Well, in this case, we're saying we're going with exactly 15 years with 12 payments a year. So we're just going to make this 12 years times 15 payments. It's not always quite that simple because, like, what if it had been 14 years and 9 months, right? Then you'd have to be a little bit more careful about this. But my goal here is not to make these super complicated. I just want you to kind of see how it works. Okay. And then we're going to subtract from that capital R, okay, which is our monthly payment amount. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to cheat a little bit with these monthly payments. Okay. So for right now, I'm just going to tell you what the monthly payment is, and we're just going to roll with it. Okay. So for right now, based off of this loan, this monthly payment would be $572.90. Okay, so just roll with that for now. I am not getting this from this problem, I'm pulling it for somewhere else, and we'll talk about where you can pull that from later. You could also just calculate that. Okay. All right, so then from there, we've got this big giant brackety thingy. All right, big fraction. First set of parentheses, it's 1 plus your interest rate, 4%, divided by 12 times a year, 12 payments a year, raised to that same 12 times 15. So this part, exactly the same. Okay, and then we're going to subtract 1 from that. That's all the numerator. And on the bottom, it's 0.04 divided by 12 again. Woot, this is a mess. All right, so I'm going to put this in my calculator, and I'm basically going to do this as 2 steps. I'm going to do all of this part first, and then I'll do all of this part second. So let's focus on the first half here. So I'm going to do, right, inside my parentheses, 1 plus 0.04 divided by 12. I'm going to raise that to the exponent of 12 times 15. Don't forget your parentheses. And then multiply that by the 120,000. And there's that lovely number. So this works out to 218,436.20 when rounded. Okay, so we've got that amount. So now I'm going to figure out this stuff here. So we're starting right inside the parentheses, start at the top. So I'm going to start with just doing that. It's kind of the same thing, right? It's the 1 plus 0.04 divided by 12, right? Raise that to the 12 times 15. So nothing's different so far. So I did that part. Now I'm going to subtract 1 from that. Make sure you get that answer. And then do divided by, and I'm going to do parentheses, 0.04 divided by 12. Okay, so use some parentheses to help you out a little bit. So do kind of each step separately, hit enter every time, and use your parentheses where you need them. So we're basically putting parentheses around this part. Okay, so that's this part here, and then I'm multiplying that by that monthly payment. So times 572.9. And we get this lovely number, 140,985, and then 24 cents. So from there, all I did was just subtract those 2 numbers, and it works out to about $77,000 that are still owed. Okay, so quick check, right? We said before we're halfway through making payments, so you'd think you'd be halfway through paying off your house, but you're actually not, right? Half of this would be $60,000, and we owe, about $17,000, $18,000 more than that. So just because you're halfway through your loan doesn't mean that you're halfway through your payments. Okay, and it's that interest idea we kind of saw, as you look at that amortization table, you see how those interest payments kind of make a difference. Okay. All right. So from here, what we're going to do is now I want to kind of shift a little bit and start focusing more on what are some more like applications of this. Where are you actually going to see this done in your real life? How would you actually use this? Okay. So that's going to be the next piece that we're going to focus on. Okay, so this question down here, we have Teresa and Raul. They purchased a house 10 years ago for $20,000, made a down payment of 20%. That is very standard. Okay, when you buy a house, you have to make a down payment. If you don't make a big enough down payment, they actually charge you more money. So your best bet is to make usually a 20% down payment on the house. Okay, if you make less than that, then they charge this extra fee that you have to continuously pay. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. So you want to have a good down payment that you can make. So they've made a 20% down payment. They got a 30-year conventional home mortgage at 3.5% on the unpaid balance. So this is a pretty standard situation. Okay, it's there's nothing really special about this situation. It's very much like okay, yeah, for a moderately priced house, 20% down payment, 3.5-year percentage. This is kind of normal. Okay, so over time, right, they've owned this house for 10 years and now the value of the property has increased. Okay, so the house isn't worth $20,000 anymore. Now it's worth $280,000. So we want to know how much equity do they have in their house now, assuming, again, we're simplifying this. So we're saying 10 years, 12 payments a month, or one payment a month, so 120 payments. Okay, so equity, what does that mean? So equity is basically how much money, like how much of the house do you actually own? Okay, because say, for example, just as a simple situation, right? Say they had taken out this loan and they had paid off all but $80,000, right? So they paid off all but $80,000. So that's all they still owe. But the value of the house is now increased to $280,000, right? So they still owe $80,000, but the value of the house now is higher. So they would have $200,000 in equity in their house. That doesn't mean that they paid off the house. They still owe that $80,000, but the amount of money, like if they were to turn around and resell the house, that's how much money they'd walk away with. Okay, so that's what the idea of equity is. If you turned around and sold your house right now for whatever it's worth now, how much money would you walk away with? Okay, so let's start by looking at this, and we're going to start by calculating our monthly payments on this loan. Okay, and this is where we're going to shift and we're going to use an online calculator to help us figure this out. Okay, so there's two links, they're in the description for this video. One of them calculates the monthly payment that's on a loan. Okay, and then the other one is going to calculate how much your remaining balance is. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next is we're going to calculate those two things. Okay, so this is the first calculator that we're looking at here. Okay, so this one is just a simple one, and I just found this by basically Googling mortgage calculator. So they're very common, they're very easy to find. I liked this one in particular just because I thought it was pretty easy to use. So let's take a look at this one. So we're going to come down here and we're going to change these numbers to match our problem. Okay, so first of all, our purchase price. So the purchase price that they gave us was $200,000. I'm just going to make sure I've got enough zeros on there. So there we go, $200,000. The down payment, you can choose whether you want to say an amount that they paid or a percentage. So we have a 20%. So I'm going to switch this to percentage, and I'm going to change this to 20%. Okay. So then it's going to automatically calculate this. So you're not going to change this number. This is automatically calculated where they said, okay, it was $200,000. You paid 20% already. So this is how much you're actually borrowing because you already gave them some money. Okay. Down here, you just want to specify, okay, this is a 30-year loan. That's what we had. And for this one, we said our interest rate was going to be 3.5%. So that's our interest rate. And we're doing this monthly because they said that we were doing monthly payments. Okay. And then from here, you can hit calculate. It kind of does it automatically for you. But then you can see down here, it's going to give you some more information. So here's your results. Whoops, come on. Sorry, it's being a little glitchy with the recording feature. Okay, so principal amount, that's how much you actually borrowed after the down payment. The interest rate we typed in, how long, monthly. Here we go. Here's our payment amount. Okay, so the first thing that they tell us is our payment amount. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill this in here that my payment amount is going to be $718.47. And I'm getting that from an online calculator. Okay. All right, so that's the first thing that I need to know. With this, if you keep scrolling down, it's going to give you an amortization table, right? There's the whole amortization table all worked out for you over the course of 30 years, right? This is the thing that they print when you buy a house. This is very long. Okay. Come on. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll back up to the top. All right, so this is the first kind of calculator that we're going to use. Now, the next problem that we're looking at here, I know this is kind of small, but the next question is, what's the balance on the loan after 120 monthly payments? Okay, so that's going to be the next thing we're going to use. And you're going to need that monthly payment amount. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this monthly payment account and I'm just going to copy it. So I'm doing right click, I'm copy, or you can do Control C. Okay, and then we're going to switch to this new calculator. Okay, we got kind of an ad in the corner here. This one gives you the balance remaining. Okay, so we scroll down here and we've got this information. So we're going to have to do a little bit of calculating here. So you can, again, just kind of pull these numbers. The original principal borrowed, remember, it's not $200,000, right? Because they made a down payment. So you can always go back and double check on here. It was actually $160,000, right? So that was my original amount. So I'm going to put that this is $160,000. Okay, the interest rate from the problem was 3.5%. Don't need to type the percent. The default monthly payment amount, I'm going to paste that here. Okay, this date thing, you can just kind of ignore that. That's if you actually had a loan and you wanted to kind of see how things fall out, you would put that in. What we want to more focus on is this one. How many months has it been? So we said in our problem that we'd made 120 monthly payments. Okay, so or we've done 120 monthly payments, so that's the number of months that have gone by, right? So 120 months have gone by. 12 payments a year, 10 years. So 120. Okay? And then again, there's these two buttons here and they're a little confusing because you think that you would need to click one of these, but you don't. You just kind of scroll down and it's going to give you the information that you need. Okay? So this is going to break it down for you. Based off of like how much is being paid and like the amount of time. Really all you need to do is just scroll all the way to the bottom. I went too far. Okay, and then there it is. This gives you your remaining balance. Okay, so we shortcutted this process a little bit. So our answer for this next part, without using the formula, we just use this online calculator, is we figured out that the balance on our loan is $123,000 or 123,833,000. I can't write and speak the number at the same time. $123,883.22. Okay, great. So that's information that we can pull from these online calculators that's going to help us out a bit. So now that we have this information, let's take a look at some actual like applications. Where are the things that we're going to need to know if you're actually like looking at this as a real life situation? What am I actually going to want to know? So first of all, how much money have you actually paid for the house so far? Okay. Now, what you might be tempted to do, because I know this is what I thought at first, was I thought, okay, well, this was the cost of the house and this is how much money they've paid. So if I subtract those two numbers, that'll tell me how much I've put into it. Like, so if this is how much is left to be paid and this is how much it cost, I should be able to subtract those and figure out how much I paid, right? But remember, you don't actually end up paying $200,000 for your house. You pay a lot more than that because you also pay interest, right? So this is including the interest payments. So if we want to know how much money has actually been paid, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to calculate this by first saying, okay, well, so far we've paid $718.47 per month, right? So we paid this much money times 12 months in a year, right? So 12 payments per year for 10 years. So that's how much money they paid in payments. But then also don't forget that down payment of 20%, right? So the down payment of 20%, that means they already paid $40,000 on this loan, right? So they've already, or not on the loan, I'm sorry. They've already paid $40,000 for this house, right? That was an initial down payment. So that's going to be what we're going to calculate to figure out what they've actually paid. So 718.47 times, so that's how much the payment is, 12 times a year for 10 years, plus that initial lump sum $40,000 payment. All right, and that right there is going to be the total amount of money that they've paid so far for this house. Okay. All right, great. Question number 2, how much equity do they have in the house? So equity, the idea of what equity is it's the idea that, like, if you were to turn around and sell your house right now, how much money would you get? Okay, well, if they sold it right now, they could sell it for $280,000, but they still have a balance left on their loan that they're going to have to pay off, right? So to figure out how much equity you have, you want to take, okay, well, what's the value of my home? And then subtract from that, how much money do you actually owe? Think about it like if you actually like turn around and sold your house and then you have to pay off the loan. What would that be? Well, you would make $280,000 from the sale, but then you have to pay off your loan balance, which is that $123,000, right? So handy dandy calculator, right? That's the sale price of the house minus, oops, how much you owe. So the amount that you would end up putting in your pocket, right? $156,000, right? That is the equity that you have in your house. So when people talk about how much equity you have, right? That's what we're talking about, is if you were to walk away right now, how much money would you walk away with? Okay, so that's how much equity they have in their house. All right, so those are just kind of some basic things that we look at when we talk about looking at a balance on a loan and why do you care and what are you going to do with it. Okay, so let's take a look at some more stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this and we're going to do all of these problems with an online calculator. Okay, so all of these are going to be done using an online calculator to kind of help us out a little bit. Okay, so 10 years ago, the Jacksons took a $30,000 loan, 30-year loan for $180,000 in their house, interest rate of 4.2%. Since then, though, the interest rate has dropped to only 3.56%. Okay, so they're thinking about refinancing their home into a 20-year mortgage to take advantage of this new rate. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what refinancing is. Okay, basically, what refinancing is it's the idea that, like, okay, you got this loan for a certain amount of time at a certain interest rate. It's kind of like starting over with a new loan where you say, okay, I'm going to borrow enough money to pay off the old loan, and then I'm going to, get the new interest rate. So it's sort of like resetting your loan. It's like kind of ending the first one and then starting up a new one with whatever your balance was that you still owed. Okay. So things to notice about this, right, is that they originally took a 30-year loan and it's been 10 years, right? So they're still looking at 20 more years for the length of their loan, and they're refinancing with a 20-year mortgage, which is the same length. Okay, so we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But notice that a 30-year loan and a 20-year, so a 30-year loan, 10 years down, and a 20-year. So they're not actually changing the terms of their loan here. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this. And like I said, we're going to use some online calculators to calculate some of this information. Okay, so the first thing that this is asking us to find is we want to calculate their current payment. So before refinancing, we just want to know how much are they currently paying. So I'm going to go to this online mortgage calculator. Again, link is in the description. And this is it's just kind of a handy one. All right, so we're going to go through here and we're going to enter in the information that we have. So they took a 30% or a 30-year loan for $180,000. So I'm going to put that number in here. There's a little bit of a delay with the website. It's not usually delayed. It's just this particular time. And originally, they did not put a down payment on, right? This problem doesn't say anything about a down payment. So we're just ignoring that part of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 0 here. And then notice that it automatically calculates the loan amount for this $180,000. So it's the same amount. All right. Loan term was originally 30 years, and our original interest rate was 4.2%. Okay, and we're calculating monthly payments here. So I click calculate, And here's my information. My original principal, it's always just a good idea to double check and make sure these numbers all look right. And there we go, our payment amount. So $880.23. So I'm just writing that number for part A. I know it's kind of hard to see the paper as we go through this because it's kind of small, but all I'm doing is just writing this one number, this $880, copying that down for that first question. Okay, so question 2, how much do they still owe? And then as a continuation of that, how much will they have to pay if they continue with this loan? Okay, so how much do they still owe? So remember, you're going to need to copy this number. So I'm going to copy and paste this number. And we're going to go over to this other calculator that calculates the remainder of your loan. Okay, so the original amount borrowed, we don't have to worry about any kind of a down payment, so I can just put in that $180,000. All right, the original interest rate was 4.2%. Okay, the monthly payment, I'm just going to go ahead and paste that there. Don't worry about this month and year first payment. And then the number of payments that have gone by, it's been 10 years, 12 payments a month, so that's 120, 10 times 12. Okay, and then when we scroll down, you kind of see this calculator showing up. It's just kind of giving you the days that you've made the payments and stuff. Scroll all the way down, and here's our remaining balance. Okay, so what did we do for this particular problem? Right? The first thing that we did was we just did a quick calculation to say that it was 10 years times 12 payments. So that's 120 payments, right? We just did that in our head. Okay. So the amount owed, so how much do they still owe? The amount owed is this number right here. So $142,762.49. Okay, so that's part 1 of this question. And then part 2, how much would they actually pay if they continued with this loan? Okay, well, how much would they pay? You have to figure out, well, how many more payments are you going to make, right? They're going to keep making this, spending this much money a month, right? That's how much they're going to pay every month. So we just have to look at it and say, well, okay, 20 years left of the mortgage, right? We're 10 years into a 30-year mortgage. So there's 20 years left times 12 payments a year, right? So 20 years times 12 payments a year, that's going to work out to 240 payments left. So this was the number that were made. This is how many are left. So what I'm going to do is multiply that $880.23 that we got up here. I'm going to multiply that by the 240 payments that are left. So 880.23 times 240 payments left works out to $211,255.20. So that's how much more they're going to actually pay, right? And this should be just kind of a note for you, right? The original cost of the house, they owe more money after 10 years than the original cost of the house was. Isn't that crazy? All right. So next question, okay, so now we're going to talk about this refinance. So if they refinance for the same amount that they currently owe, what will their new payment be? So when you refinance, you don't start over with the original cost of the house. You just look at how much money do you still owe, right? So this is how much money is left on the loan. This is how much you would pay total, but this is how much money is actually left on the loan. This number includes all the interest that you're going to pay over 20 years on this balance. Okay, but this is like the amount that if you were to like pay the loan off right now, that's how much money it would be. Okay, so that's the number that we're going to use. So I'm going to take this number and I'm going to copy it. And that's going to be our new loan amount. So I'm going back to this calculator. All right, and now we're saying, okay, we're doing now a new loan for that amount that we just calculated is left. And let's change this. No new down payment, so we can skip that. But now we're changing this to a 20-year loan. Make this a little smaller. And our new interest rate, it says, is 3.56%. So 3.56%. Oops. There we go. Monthly payments. Calculate. Scroll down here and let's see what's changed. So what has changed? Our new payment amount is now going to be $832.37. Okay, so when we calculate this, our new payment is $832.37. Okay, great. So if they refinance, first thing to note is that you're going to save money every month, right? Because your monthly payment got smaller. Okay, so that's a nice thing. That's one of the reasons why people refinance. And that makes sense, right? Because if it's a lower interest rate, it should be lower payments. Okay. All right, how much are they going to end up paying total for the new loan? So that's kind of what we were asking here, right? We know they're paying this much per month, and we want to figure out, well, how many payments are they going to make? So they're going to pay $832.37 every month, so times 12. And they're going to do that. The length of this loan is 20 years. So they're going to do that for 20 years. So $832.37 times 12 times 20, according to my calculator, 1,997,680. So $199,000. So again, comparatively, this is how much money they'd have to pay if they continue with the loan they have versus this one. And you can see that it's going to end up saving them some money, right? They're going to pay less total over the length of time. So, question E, how much money did they save by refinancing? Well, originally, right, this green number up here, it was originally going to cost them this $211,000, right? And now we're saying that the new cost is going to be this $199,000. Okay, so if I subtract those two numbers, that's going to tell me how much money I saved, right? Looks like it's going to be about $12,000. All right, so I'm going to put this in my calculator. 211, 255.20 minus 199, 768.80. Right, so we're looking at a savings. So that works out to $11,486.40. So that is going to be the amount of money that they saved. Okay, so what are these numbers again? Okay, this is the amount to be paid on the old loan. So that's how much is left to be paid on the old loan. Okay, this number right here, this is the amount to be paid on the new loan. Okay, and when you subtract those, this number right here is the savings. So that's how much money that you save by refinancing. Okay, great. So, would this be a good idea for them to do? Maybe. It actually kind of depends a little bit. So they're going to save about $11,000. And right off the bat, you might think, well, yeah, if you're going to save $11,000, go for it, right? You do have to consider some other things. Most of the time, there's closing costs involved in doing a mortgage. So when you set up a mortgage, they usually charge you money to set it up. So depending on how much those closing costs are, it can be not necessarily worth it. It's also kind of a hassle to go through. So I mean, there's that too. So it's not necessarily always worth refinancing. That's something that it's kind of a judgment call that you have to look at it and say, is this worth it for me to do this? And if you have to get those closing costs, sometimes they can be like thousands of dollars. And if you don't have those thousands of dollars, then you can't really refinance, right? All right, so then our next question here, we're modifying this a little bit instead. So we're saying, okay, what if when they go to refinance, they decide to go with another 30-year loan? Okay, so up here, they refinanced with a 20-year loan. So remember how we said it was a 30-year loan that they were 10 years into? So there's 20 years left and they refinanced for a 20-year. So like from the beginning to the end, the amount of time hasn't changed. Now what we're saying is they're saying when they go to refinance, they go to a new 30-year loan. So they've already done 10 years of payments. Now they're tacking on an additional 30 years. So like from the time of the purchasing to the end, it will be 40 years total. Okay, so we're adding on a longer amount of time. Okay, what's their new payment going to be? How much will they end up paying? and how much money did they save or lose by refinancing? Okay, so we've modified this question a little bit, and we're going to take a look at this and change things up a little bit. So let's go back to this calculator here. Okay, so I'm keeping this amount because we're still refinancing. This number here, this isn't changing. So that's staying the same. We're keeping the percentage the same. But what we're changing is now we're going to say we're going to make it a 30-year loan. Oh, and I forgot. This is the part up top where I actually enter this stuff. Oops. Sorry, I don't know why it's scrolling like that. Okay, so we're changing this and it's now going to be a 30-year loan. All right, so let's calculate. So what's going to happen? So payment amount drops to $645.86. All right, so their new payment, right, drops to $645.86. And remember, right, the original loan that they're on right now, they're paying $880. So that's a significant savings every month, right? That's dropping you like more than $200 a month that you'd be saving. Okay, so that's significant. All right, so second question. We got their new payment. So then the second question is how much will they end up paying? So the total amount paid. Right? That's not how you spell paid. There we go. Total amount paid, right? Let's calculate that. So how much are they paying? Well, they're going to pay the $645.86 every month for 30 years, right? So I'm going to multiply those numbers together. So $645.86 times 12 months in a year for 30 years works out to $232,000. So the total amount is $232,509.60. Okay. So that's how much that they're going to end up actually paying. So notice this, right? In the original loan, when we looked at this guy, let me make that a little bigger. Okay, when we looked at our original loan, they would only have to pay $211,000, right? When we refinanced with the 20-year mortgage, it dropped to only $199,000. But when you refinance with another 30 years, so when you increase the amount of time, the total amount of money actually went up. You end up paying more money. So even though your payment is lower every month, because you're paying it for an extra 10 years, that outweighs the savings that you have every month. So the total amount that you end up paying is actually more. Okay? So how much money did they save or lose? Let's compare that. So the original amount, right, was the $211,255, right? So that was the original amount that they would still have to pay. And if I subtract this new amount here that we're going to end up paying for this new loan, okay, if I throw this into my calculator, so 211, 255, 20 minus 232, 509. Oops, I added an extra decimal point. Let me delete that. All right, so when I actually subtract these two numbers, you're going to notice, first of all, that you're going to get a negative number. Okay, and this negative number is how much money you're actually losing out on. Okay, so this answer right here, right, this is negative 21,254.40, right? So that number right there, it's a negative number. So what this is telling me is that they're actually paying more with their refinancing. Okay, so this is a thing that happens with a lot of people. Okay, and this is kind of the danger in refinancing. If you have a loan and you refinance it, if you keep the amount of time the same, like we did here, right? We had 20 years left on the mortgage and we refinanced with the same amount of time. It's going to save you a little bit every month. and it's going to save you a good chunk of money over time. If, though, you increase the amount of time for your loan, it's going to save you a lot every month, but it's going to actually cost you more in the long run. Okay, so that's kind of a trap that people fall into sometimes, is that they'll think, oh, okay, well, I'm saving money every month, so won't I be saving money total? No, you end up paying more money in the total because you add so much more time on the end, and that makes it longer. Okay, so that's just kind of the danger of refinancing. So when we talk about real life reasons for why you want to refinance or why you might not want to refinance, okay, there are good reasons for and against doing it. Okay, so why might you want to refinance? Well, first of all, as long as the new interest rate is lower than the original one, you're going to have lower monthly payments. Okay, and depending on like what's going on in your financial situation, that can be a real benefit. Okay, so lower monthly payments is very nice. Okay, and then if the time stays the same, right, then you have a lower total cost. Okay, so as long as the new interest rate is lower and the amount of time stays the same, you're going to have a lower total cost. Okay, what are some real life reasons why you might not want to refinance? Okay, well, one, you wouldn't want to do it if the interest rate is higher. Okay, so interest rate, they change. Okay, so they change pretty frequently, even just like from month to month, they're different. From week to week, they're different. So the interest rates change. And if you're going to have a higher interest rate, then obviously you don't want to refinance. Okay. All right. Another reason is that those closing costs that we mentioned, right? So the costs involved in refinancing. Okay, if you don't have a lot of money on hand and they're going to charge you a couple of $1,000s to refinance, then it's probably not something that you'd be able to do. So there are costs involved in refinancing. So that is another reason why you might not want to. Okay, and then reason number 3, as we kind of saw here, you might end up paying more in the long run. Okay, so you may pay more in the long run. Okay. So it's something that is actually like something that you need to consider. There's no like right or wrong answer when it comes to refinancing. If you're in a situation right now where you can't afford your monthly payment and your choice is between, refinancing to get a lower monthly payment or losing your home, then you'd be better off trying to do this. If that's what you need to do to keep your head above water, then okay, yeah, you'll pay more in the long run, but you can always refinance again, right? If you do this and you find that, okay, you just needed to get your legs back underneath you, and after 5 years, you could go back to the original payment, you could always refinance again for a shorter length of time. Okay. You could also refinance for a longer amount of time and then just pay extra, right? You're always welcome to pay extra on a loan that you have. You don't have to just pay your monthly payment. And if you pay extra, it goes off of the principal and it'll cut down how much money you end up paying. Okay, so there's no like right or wrong answer when it comes to refinancing. It's something that's very much personal decision that based on the situation that you're in. Okay, but you do just need to make sure that you're aware of what's going on. Because again, the trap that a lot of people fall into is you get these flyers in the mail and they say, oh, refinance your loan and your payment will drop to $645. And you think, wow, that's awesome. That's going to save me so much money, right? But in the long run, it actually doesn't. Okay, so these are just things that you want to make sure that you consider as you're thinking about mortgages as you get older and paying for kind of large sums of money.